You love them. That's never been the problem. You care deeply. You've shown up. You've stayed late. You've given more than you had, sometimes without being asked. And when they do ask, something inside you tightens. Because you want to say yes. You want to help. You want to be seen as kind, generous, dependable. But sometimes the yes comes with a cost. You say yes when you're tired, when you're stretched, when you know it means putting your own needs last. And then you feel it, that quiet frustration that creeps in after the phone call ends. That heaviness in your chest as you rearrange your plans. That voice in the back of your mind that whispers, "Why can't I just say no?" You're not alone. For many people, especially after 60, when life grows quieter and relationships feel more precious, the word no becomes harder to use. It feels like a risk. What if they think you're selfish? What if they stop asking? What if they take it personally? But here's the truth. Saying no isn't rejection. It's recognition. It's recognizing that your time, your energy, your peace, they matter too. And you don't have to choose between kindness and boundaries. You can have both. This video is not about becoming cold. It's not about saying no to everything or building walls. It's about learning the quiet art of saying no with love, with clarity, with grace, so that your no is not a punishment, but a form of care. Because when your yes always comes at your own expense, eventually resentment takes root. And resentment, even silent, is what damages relationships, not honesty. Today, we'll walk through 6 gentle shifts that can help you start saying no in a way that feels natural. Not forced, not defensive, but honest, rooted, calm. These aren't scripts. They're practices. Internal shifts in how you see yourself, your role, your worth. Because saying no isn't just a communication skill. It's a relationship with your own self-respect. And when that relationship deepens, everything else softens. You'll learn how to say no without over-explaining, how to set boundaries without guilt, how to make peace with the fact that disappointment isn't cruelty, it's a natural part of human life, and how to trust that the people who truly love you can handle your honesty, sometimes better than you think. We'll begin not with words, but with permission, the kind that comes from within, the kind you may have been waiting decades to give yourself. Because until you believe you're allowed to say no, no script will ever feel safe enough. Let's begin there. There's a moment, usually quiet, usually private, when you start to wonder, do I really have a right to say no? Not in theory, but in practice. When someone you love asks for your time, your help, your presence, and your body says, "I'm tired," but your mouth says, "Of course." That's where it begins. Not with the words you speak to others, but with the permission you give yourself. And for many of us, that permission was never modeled. Maybe you grew up believing love meant sacrifice. That being available meant being good. That saying yes kept the peace. That being needed was proof of being valued. And so you learned to say yes, even when your chest ached with reluctance. You learned to smile while ignoring the knot in your stomach. You learned to stretch your energy thin, thinking that love meant being selfless, even if that meant being invisible. But here's what no one told you. You're allowed to protect your peace without being a villain. Saying no does not make you unkind. It does not mean you love them less. It means you are honoring what's real. And when your no is rooted in truth, not in anger, not in spite, but in clarity, it often becomes easier for others to receive than you imagine. But it has to begin inside, with a sentence you may never have heard before. I am allowed to choose what's right for me. Not always, not selfishly, but honestly, because your energy has limits. Your days have shape. And when you bend, every time someone leans on you, eventually you begin to collapse. Linda, 72, told me she felt guilty for declining a family invitation, even though it meant flying across the country, spending money she didn't have, and sleeping in a noisy house that always left her exhausted. I thought if I said no, they'd feel hurt, she said. But I realized I was hurting myself just to protect their comfort. She chose honesty, a soft call, a kind tone, a gentle no. And you know what happened? They understood, she said, more than I thought they would. They said, "Thanks for telling us. We'll send pictures." That's the moment she realized something powerful. Saying no doesn't always rupture the connection. Sometimes it deepens trust, because what you model is truth, and people can feel that. They may be disappointed, but they also feel the safety of your boundaries. And in time, that teaches them how to honor their own. This is the foundation, giving yourself permission, not from rebellion, but from compassion. Your worth is not measured by how much of yourself you give away. Your love is not proven by how often you say yes. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is pause, breathe, and choose with care. And that brings us to the next gentle shift. It's one thing to feel your no inside, but how do you say it out loud without guilt? That's where we're going next. Guilt is sneaky. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It says things like, you should go. They'll think you don't care. They need you more than you need rest. What if they stop asking? Even after you've decided, even when your body sighs with relief at the thought of saying no, guilt slides in and rearranges everything. So you text back, sure, I'll be there. You answer the phone, knowing you don't have the energy. You say yes, and then feel tired, and quietly resentful. The truth is, many of us weren't taught how to say no without guilt. We were taught that being good means being available, that being loving means being accommodating, that keeping the peace is more important than protecting our energy. But here's something to hold close. Guilt is not always a signal that you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's a signal that you're doing something different. And different, especially if you spend a lifetime saying yes, will feel uncomfortable at first. Not because it's wrong, but because it's new. Guilt often comes from old wiring, not current reality. And the way to soften it is not by ignoring it, but by noticing it without obeying it. You can say no and still be kind. You can say no and still be generous. In fact, when you say no honestly, your yes becomes more sacred, more believable, more rooted in presence. So how do you say no without drowning in guilt? You begin with truth. Short, clear, compassionate. You don't need long explanations. You don't need a dozen excuses. You simply need your words to match your reality. Something like, I really care about this, but I need to pass this time. Or, I'm not able to do that right now, but I hope it goes beautifully. Or even, I'm focusing on rest this week, so I won't be attending. That's it. No epalegi. No over-explaining. No long list of reasons to earn your no. Because no is not a crime that needs a defense. It's a decision, one made with care, one that reflects your capacity, not your love. Roger, 67, said he used to over-explain every time he declined an invitation. I'd tell them about my schedule, my back pain, the weather, he laughed. And still, I felt guilty. Then he started practicing shorter, warmer no's. To my surprise, people accepted them. The only one who needed the long explanation was me. That's the shift, realizing that the guilt doesn't come from the world. It comes from the stories we tell ourselves about what love is supposed to look like. But love doesn't mean erasing your limits. Real connection doesn't require you to say yes when you need to say no. And the more you practice honest, gentle refusals, the more natural they begin to feel. The guilt doesn't vanish overnight, but over time it fades, replaced by a quiet confidence, a steadiness, a sense that you are finally showing up not just for others, but for yourself. And that's where healthy relationships begin, not with pleasing, but with presence. From this steadier place, we move to something deeper. The fear behind the guilt, the question beneath the pause. What if they get upset? What if they pull away? That's what we'll face next. Not to fix it, but to stop fearing it. What if they get quiet? What if they don't understand? What if the tone changes or the next invitation never comes? That's the fear that lingers in the corners of a quiet no. Not because you did anything cruel, but because we've been taught that disappointment equals danger. That if someone feels let down, it means we failed them. That their frown is a sign we went too far. But here's the truth that takes time to learn. You can disappoint someone and still love them. And they can be disappointed and still love you. Disappointment is not rejection. It's not a severing. It's a natural emotional response when expectations aren't met. And when we fear it too deeply, we often twist ourselves to avoid it. We abandon our own needs. We cancel our own rest. We say yes even when we don't mean it. Not out of generosity, but out of fear. But relationships that are built on truth, not just comfort, can hold more than we think. When you say no, and it's honest, and your tone is calm, and your heart is still open, that's not damage. That's clarity. And yes, sometimes there will be a pause, a sigh, a reaction. Sometimes your no will create space. But space is not the same as distance. And silence is not the same as punishment. Letting someone sit with their own reaction is part of mature love. You don't need to rescue them from their feelings. You don't need to rush in with reassurance, apology, overcompensation. You can stay present. You can stay kind and still let the boundaries stand. Sometimes people need time. Sometimes they need to adjust. Sometimes they're surprised, especially if you've always said yes. But often they come back. They understand. And in that return, something deeper is formed. Respect, trust, the sense that your relationship can survive honesty. It's okay to say no and let the discomfort breathe. It's okay if they need a moment. It's okay if they feel a little hurt. Hurt isn't hate. Discomfort isn't danger. And boundaries don't have to be aggressive to be real. Marjorie, 69, told me she feared saying no to her daughter's constant requests. Babysitting, last-minute errands, weekend rides. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, she said. I love helping her, but she also felt drained, tired, unseen. So one day, she said no, with warmth, not distance. She was quiet, Marjorie told me. But then a few days later, she texted, "Thanks for being honest. I'm learning to ask earlier." That's what surprised her most. Her no didn't break the bond. It invited a better rhythm, a more thoughtful exchange. That's what healthy boundaries do. They create space for everyone's needs to coexist, not collapse. So if someone pulls away after your no, pause. Breathe. Trust that the relationship can hold more than silence. And if it can't, that's a different truth, but it's still one worth knowing. The next piece is something softer. It's what you say when the pressure builds. Not to refuse, but to pause, to buy time, to breathe before answering. And it might just be the most powerful 2 words in the practice of boundaries. Not yet. Let's walk into that gently. Sometimes the hardest part isn't saying no. It's knowing what you want to say in the moment. You get the text, the call, the question, and suddenly your heart beats faster. You don't want to disappoint. You don't want to overcommit. You're not even sure how you feel yet, but everyone's waiting. So you respond too quickly. You say yes while your body says no. You agree, then regret. And that's when the resentment grows, not from the request itself, but from how little room you gave yourself to choose. That's why one of the most powerful boundary tools isn't a full refusal. It's a pause, a breath, a short sentence that gives you time to check in with your own needs. And that sentence sounds like this: "Let me think about it," or "I'll get back to you," or simply, "Not yet." These are not avoidance. They're permission. Permission to make decisions from clarity, not from fear. Permission to gather your energy, to consider your schedule, to honor your own pace. When you delay your answer, you give yourself a chance to respond instead of react. You create space between someone else's desire and your own truth. And in that space, something incredible happens. Your decision becomes more honest, more grounded, more aligned with your values. Roger, 75, said he used to say yes to every favor from his church group. "I didn't want to seem unhelpful," he said, "but I was burning out." So he started saying, "Let me check my week and get back to you." It felt strange at first, like he was dodging something. But soon he realized he wasn't avoiding. He was respecting the request enough to answer it thoughtfully. That's the key. Delay isn't disrespect. It's a form of care. You're taking the request seriously. You're giving it attention. You're choosing how and when you engage. And that choice builds confidence. It also creates a rhythm that others begin to recognize. When you stop being immediately available, people start planning better. They ask sooner. They give more notice. They begin to mirror the respect you've given yourself. And if someone doesn't like the pause, that's useful information too, because healthy relationships allow breathing room. And if the bond can't tolerate a moment of reflection, it may not be as solid as it seemed. Boundaries aren't just about refusal. They're also about timing, about honoring the space between question and answer. And when you practice that pause, even in the smallest interactions, You teach your nervous system that decisions don't have to be made in a rush, that you can hold uncertainty, that silence isn't failure, and that wisdom lives in waiting. The final piece brings it all together. It's what holds every no, every pause, every kind refusal. It's not a word, it's a presence, a quiet way of showing up to your relationships with honesty, calm, and love. We'll end there on something deeper than language, something that allows you to set boundaries without needing to build walls. Let's finish with grace. There's a way to say no that doesn't feel like closing a door, a way to hold your own boundary while still keeping your heart open. And it doesn't come from strategy or perfectly chosen words. It comes from grace. Grace is the tone in your voice when you speak the truth. It's the warmth in your eyes when you say, "Not this time." It's the steadiness of knowing your limits and the softness of still caring deeply. Grace doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean swallowing your needs to keep others comfortable. Grace is presence. It's being fully in your no, while still being fully in relationship. It's choosing calm over defense, openness over fear, honesty over guilt. And the more you practice it, the more you begin to see that boundaries don't push people away. They teach people how to love you better, because grace makes room for the human experience, yours and theirs. When someone asks for something you can't give, grace helps you say no without apology, but with understanding. You might say, "I can't be there this weekend, but I'll be thinking of you. Let's catch up next week." Or, "I'm not able to do that, but I hope it all goes smoothly." The words matter less than the energy behind them. When your no is delivered with kindness, not guilt, not resentment, it lands more softly. And when you believe in your right to have needs, others begin to believe in it too. Paul, 71, said he used to dread phone calls from his brother. He'd always want to vent, and I'd listen for an hour, exhausted, even when I didn't have the capacity. One day, Paul said, "I'm here for you, but can we talk tomorrow instead?" The tone was different. It wasn't offensive. It was anchored in care. He said, "Yes," Paul told me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to disappear to be helpful. That's what grace offers. A way to stay connected without betraying yourself. A way to remain generous without becoming depleted. It teaches you that love doesn't require overextension, that honesty doesn't equal rejection, and that protecting your peace is a gift you give to everyone who depends on you. Because a person who honors their limits becomes more present when they're truly there. So if you've struggled to say no, if you've feared hurting someone by choosing yourself, if you've carried guilt, hesitation, or shame around your needs, let this be your permission. You're not closing your heart. You're creating space for real connection. One where everyone, including you, gets to breathe. Let your no be soft. Let your boundary be firm. Let your love be honest. That's how we stay close without losing ourselves. Thank you for being with us. If this spoke to you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What boundary are you learning to hold? What no are you ready to say? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us next time for more quiet tools to help you live, relate, and rest with peace. One honest word at a time.